Hi, my name is Melanie Hudson, and this is my discussion for this week. Um, I know we are discussing all the material that we read this week, which was very disheartening. Um, but it was disheartening not for the reasons that you would think. I find it very telling, of course, the things that we were reading, talking about strange fruit, the education of Blacks, the fear of educating Blacks or slaves at the time, watching 13th, and just reading all of this material. And maybe because it is at the beginning of February with Black History Month, um, just this month as a school counselor, one of my jobs has been to help promote Black history. And so I've been doing that by asking students to share their thoughts with me about what Black history means to them. And they get to read those remarks over the morning announcements, as well as we also sharing little known Black history facts. So when reading the article, talking about reading the article about the fear of educating Black people, even though this was written almost, what, 300 years, 400 years ago, a long time ago, it feels like we're having the same discussion now, with the idea of talking about critical race theory, about removing certain Black history from American history, excluding crucial parts of our history from the books, or trying to erase it altogether. It's hard not to feel like that old saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Because the argument that was made in the article about the fear of educating slaves is, at that time, it feels like the dominant culture understood what they understand now, that knowledge is power. And if the slaves had the right, or had the ability to read, to interpret laws for themselves, to understand what this new country meant and what it said, then they would have power. And they knew that they couldn't. The dominant culture knew that they could not have that, because the one way that they could suppress the non-dominant culture and keep the non-dominant culture in its place is to take away their power. And you take away their power by taking away their ability to learn and to gain knowledge. So thinking about how that relates to today, and how that relates to us as school counselors. As school counselors, I believe it is our job to help our children learn how to love themselves while they're on this journey of self-discovery. And part of loving themselves is understanding who they are as a whole person, understanding who they are within their family, their culture, their ethnicity, their religion, their sexual identity, their sexual orientation, their gender identity, helping them to navigate through all of that while loving themselves and having pride in who they are, and understanding the system that is created around them. So it's difficult to do that with non-dominant cultures if we cannot talk about their history. I'll just talk about African American children. How can I teach my African American children to be proud of themselves if I can't teach them about their history, about where their people have come from, and the resilience that they have? There's pride in that. Just like there's pride in my white students when they talk about their families and where their families have come from and how far they've come, whether just hearing their stories. There is power in knowing your history, and it helps you learn who it is you are today, because you're able to see what your people were capable of in the past. And if they could do that then imagine the power that I have and what I can accomplish now. So I think we're kind of in a dangerous time. And I don't mean to sound pessimistic, but when I say that the readings the past week is disheartening, that's what I mean, is that I feel we're having a similar discussion now. as to how we want to remove power from the non-dominant cultures because of a fear of what may happen. And so that is a tough road to navigate as a school counselor. And again, I think ways that we can help our students is to continue to promote self-esteem, self-efficacy, resilience, and teaching them how to love themselves and what that all can encompass. And so I always like the idea of doing genograms and things of that nature. But just, it's a tough, again, it's very tough to navigate right now. But personally, I'm always trying to pour into all of my students and hopes that I can help change the conversation in the building by celebrating all of these months, celebrating Asian American Month and Hispanic Heritage, and African, and of course, Black History Month, where my hope is by offering facts and education and bulletin boards and having students talk about how they feel, or what these months mean to them, that in hopes of them participating in these events and doing their own research, that they will find some sense of pride or see themselves in some of the activities that we do. I hope that makes sense. So then thinking about the next thing that we did was watching the documentary 13th. And I've watched this documentary with my husband and also with my 15-year-old son and my 14-year-old son. And I've watched it 3 times. And the third time, it was one point, I mean, of course, there are a lot of points in there, the fact of how the system is created, to keep certain populations incarcerated, how the system is not created for rehabilitation. And again, looking at the history and seeing why things are the way they are today. But from a school counseling standpoint, the one part about the 13th documentary that stood out to me was how many of our students in our building have family members who are incarcerated. And there was a statement made in the documentary that it's not only the person doing time, it's the entire family. And I don't think we have enough interventions or support in my building personally for our students who are students who have parents who are incarcerated. One, they're hard to identify because unless you know the history of the family, whether a family member has told you that this has happened or guardianship has changed, we may not know that that parent is incarcerated. I had an incident like that with a student who was continuously acting out, was leaving class without permission to go on the phone. But come to find out, her mother had just been arrested and was in jail. And so whenever her mother would call, she would take the phone call whenever she would receive it, which would a lot of times happen in geometry class. And instead of asking for permission, she would just leave. And I was asked to talk to her because she got very upset, was very combative with the teacher, and was written up and sent to ISS. And when I went in there to counsel her and talk to her about her behavior, I got to the heart of the matter and found that out. But a lot of times it's not until something has happened that we know what's going on. And so trying to figure out a way that we can better identify those students whose parents are incarcerated, and then to provide the support that they need. Thinking about some of the things that we could do. I think mentorship is very important because it's very isolating. Many students may not want to share that information, maybe because they are embarrassed. They don't want anyone to know, but yet it would be comforting, I think, for them to have someone else who's going through something similar so that they can discuss their feelings and their experiences and to find comfort together. And so thinking of finding mentors, maybe previous students whose parents were incarcerated, who have graduated and who have moved on, and connecting them with some of our students to kind of help them through that transition. Then also thinking about some of our students whose parents have come out of jail and have come back home and dealing with the transition at home and the dynamics at home, and what kind of support can we offer. Whether it's just giving them a reference or sending them to a family therapist, or offering resources, not sending them to a family therapist, it's not what I mean, but sending resources or giving them resources to help them learn how to communicate, or how to change, or how to navigate through the new dynamics now that that family member is back. But just watching the documentary, that was the one thing that kind of pointed, one of the things that triggered my thinking as a school counselor, as what am I doing in the building to really help our children who are dealing with this. You know, reading all of this material, you know, it's hard not to, you know, I mean, as a Black woman, as a mother of 2 Black sons and a beautiful Black daughter, it's hard not to get upset or not to be discouraged when reading and watching, when listening to Strange Fruit, when watching Billie Holiday versus the United States of America, watching 13th documentary, reading the articles about the fear of educating Black people, but thinking about the discussions that are being had in our building, you know, about what teachers, how they feel, whether they're against critical race theory or not, or how they feel about teaching Black history in U.S. history, you know, because everyone is not happy with celebrating Black history. And so thinking about all of that, and how do we advocate for our children and navigate through these murky waters and be a sounding board for our students to discuss some of the issues that they may have, or some of the emotions they may have with everything going on, from social injustice, things they see on social media, to TikTok, to things that they're hearing in the classroom, things that are going on at home. It's a very challenging time. And we just have to be diligent in how we navigate through all of this, and making sure that we are creating substantial, consistent programs to help our children.